Najwa Zebian.
Najwa Zebian.
Najwa Zebian.
Her name is Najwa Zebian.
Is me forgiving somebody enough to empower me to change?
You could forgive someone and still believe that what they did was absolutely wrong. And I think you can forgive someone and still feel a little bit of pain every time you think back to what they did to you. You have to remind yourself that it hurts because that person meant something to you. It hurts because you invested in them in some way. It hurts because you never thought they would hurt you in that way, and they did.
Lots of others, outsiders, can look at somebody else's relationship and go, what the heck are you doing with him? But the pain of the change is too overwhelming to even consider.
The advice I would give to a person like that is when this person mistreats you or lies to you, close your eyes and say, how does this actually feel? Because it feels awful. And if you allow yourself to feel the pain, then maybe it'll push you to make the right decision.
None of us like change. We really resist it. But Najwa Zebian is going to talk to us today all about change, how we handle it, how we process it, and how we can use it to our advantage.
Change is hard because it forces us to let go of what we thought our life was going to be like. It forces something within us to actually change. And why would we want that?
Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the podcast in partnership with the Emirates Literature Festival. Now, today's guest is a lady who, until recently, I didn't know much about. But I have had such a profound conversation with her that it really got me to stop and think. So please welcome Najwa Zebian. This episode is proudly sponsored by Allsopp Allsopp, Dubai's leading and largest real estate brokerage. They've been in business for 16 years, and they have created 153 millionaires within their organization. The top earners in the company are taking in over 10 million dirhams in commission annually. Now, has that got your attention? Because it gets better. If you're considering a change in career or you're looking for your next step, there literally is only one choice. Life at Allsopp Allsopp offers unlimited tax-free earning potential and an unmatched high-performance culture that you'll find in no other brokerage here in the UAE. They're there because they're designed to unlock your full potential. Be trained by the best to become the best. You'll be working with a hand-picked team of real estate experts who really are the best the industry has to offer. There's no wonder they have the strongest retention in the industry. Are you ready to change your life? Get in touch with Allsopp Allsopp. Keep moving. Najwa.
Hi.
Thanks for coming to join me on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
So we're here at the Festival of Literature, and it's not your first time to Dubai. You've been here before, but have you been to the festival before?
Not this festival, no. This is my first time.
Tell us about your experience.
It's been great so far. I'm blown away by the number of authors that are here and just the hype over being here. I've seen so many videos on Instagram and TikTok of people just, showing all the books that they're looking at and the festivities that are going on, and it's exciting.
So, an author.
Yes.
How does that feel?
I never saw myself as an author, ever. Because when I started writing, it wasn't to write a book or to publish a book. It was a personal journey toward myself to express my thoughts and feelings, and it was just me and my journal. And when I started sharing those writings with my students at the time, because I'm a teacher by training and it was my first year of teaching, seeing the difference it made in their lives, and then they would share it with their parents, and then teachers would read them, and then I had people saying, I just want these reflections in one place where I could just open a book and read them. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I figured out how to be a self-published author, but I still never saw myself as one. And then a publisher approached me, and I was like, this is weird, because people usually, they aim to be an author, they find an agent, and for me, it happened backwards. So, yeah, even to this day, I think being an author it's such an integral part of who I am that it's hard for me to just say, I'm an author because I see myself as a human, which means I'm an author in some way, if that makes sense. I'm opting.
Part of what you are, isn't
Yeah. I'm opting to share the way I think and feel with the world. Yeah.
The book is called The Only Constant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's your book. It's obviously a nice hardback, and thank you for the gift.
Of course.
Tell me more about the book.
So The Only Constant is obviously all about change. We all have heard the words, the only constant in life is change. And I was going through many changes in my life at the time that I decided to write this book. My grandma had just passed away, which was a really big invitation for me to grieve. And I didn't know how to do that properly. But that was a change I didn't choose. And at the same time, I was coming to the end of my doctorate program. And it was the first time in my life that I wasn't going to be a student, or I wasn't going to be someone who's constantly achieving something. It was like I was transitioning from doing to being. So that was a change I chose for myself. I didn't want to continue running that never-ending race of just work, be productive, hustle, all of that. I decided this is the time for me to start living life at 33 years old. And at that same time, I had many friendships and relationships, including family, work, all of that, very clearly needing to come to an end. So I was going through these three big themes of change: changes we don't choose, changes we choose, and changes we need to make. And I wanted to write the book to let people know how they can navigate those changes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's talk about change, because I think change is terrifying
Yes.
to some people.
For many that don't admit it. For many, not just some.
But let's talk about the different ways that it affects people, because when I think about change, to me, does an optimist see change so much differently to a pessimist or a cynic? You know, does an optimist see change as opportunity? And is change sometimes something that's positioned or branded in a way that could create fear? And the reason I ask this is I remember years ago when I was working in Amsterdam, one of my big clients was a big Dutch bank called ABN AMRO. And there was a guy that worked for the bank that was in charge of change management.
Wow.
And I was like, well, what do you do?
You're like, is your job needed?
I was like, what does that mean? He said, well, people don't like change. It says if we implement new systems into the bank, people resist the new systems. They don't like it. He said, so they push back against it. And my job's to help them understand and facilitate that change and help them buy into the benefits of the change and the upside of it. And so I'm basically doing that all day long, helping people understand the change. And always, he said, I'm essentially a salesperson within the business, trying to sell and convince and persuade everybody that this change is going to be good for them.
Yes.
And so when I kind of like saw that, I was like, wow, how do we deal with change? And it affects literally everything that you are if any part of you in any way changes from one stage to another.
Yes.
And that can be really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me how you see that and what you've learned about that.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is change is hard because we want it to be easy. We want everything in life to just be easy. So sometimes we struggle more with the fact that something changed in our life than what that change actually is, because it disturbs the natural state of feeling stable, like things are the same. So change is hard because we want it to be easy. And change is hard because it forces us to let go of what we thought our life was going to be like. It forces us to let go of what we thought or how we thought or who we thought the people around us were. Like, it forces something within us to actually change. And why would we want that? Why would we want to change something that to us is working? And sometimes the reason it works is because it's so familiar. We know how to navigate it. You know how people say better the devil you know?
Mm-hmm.
I used to say that all the time. And now I'm like, well, we say that because we know how to navigate that devil. But why can't we say, better the peace you don't know yet? Better the relationship you don't know yet? Like, we stick to the nature of things staying the same because of the discomfort that comes with things being stirred up. Nobody really wants that. And back to your question about would an optimist welcome change more than a pessimist would? I don't think it makes a difference, because I think sometimes people who are very optimistic use that optimism to deal with whatever changes in life, and they stay positive and they say, I can do it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they want those changes or that they actually welcome them. And a pessimist could love change because they're pessimistic about their current reality, and they think anything new that comes their way is better than what they have. The grass is greener on the other side. So I don't think it matters whether you're an optimist or a pessimist. I think change comes with its own set of challenges and with its own sets of sometimes freedoms and feelings of relief. So it just depends on whether it's a change you saw coming, whether it's a change you hoped for, whether it's a change you were working towards and it finally happened. But I think most of the changes that people struggle with are the ones that just blindside you. Like you got fired from your job, or your husband or wife came home and said, I want a divorce, or you got diagnosed with a disease and you don't know how to heal from it, or you don't know how you're going to deal with
that for a second here, because we've got those two types of change. That change that came to you, so the husband and wife says, I want a divorce, plus the change of I'm going to leave you. Okay, so I'm going to leave. So you and I are married, you come in the door one night and you say, Spence, it's over. Okay, vice versa. I come in the door one night and I'm like, it's over. Yeah. Both of them are painful.
Yes.
But invariably for most people, or you hear most people say, whether it's 6, 12 months, 24 months later, it was for the best.
Yeah.
I know. I look back on it now, and of course it was painful for those moments, that time, that period, but I'm in a much better place than I was before. You don't often hear people say, I'm 2 years down the road and I'm, buggered, my life's 10 times worse than it was.
Yeah.
It's not often what I hear.
It's rare, but I do see people who dwell on a certain change for the rest of their lives sometimes. Like I know people who've gotten broken up with, and that became their whole identity. They still think of the person who broke up with them. They think that they're the one who ruined their life. But you're right. I think most people, once the change actually happens, and as they say, as everything settles down and you can see clearly, because the analogy I always go for when a change comes in and just it disrupts everything in your life, it kind of makes things murky and clear. Muddy water is best settled by letting it sit. Like don't try to change things, just give it time and things will become clear. I think most people in those initial moments of something happening that they really don't want, they sit there and think like, why me? And why is this happening? And I'm not ready for it. I would have been better off if I was ready for it, or if it was something I actually wanted. And then once they give it a little bit of time and they have that distance away from that person, they realize that maybe the relationship was broken to begin with, but they just couldn't see it because they were so in it and trying so hard to make it work. So I think time that comes with introspection and with working toward accepting the change that happened can really open a person's eyes to, wow, like that really, that cord being cut between me and that person was really for the best. I didn't know how much it was weighing me down or making me stuck in my own life until I finally, broke free of it.
Lots of others, outsiders, can look at somebody else's relationship and go, what the heck are you doing with him? What the heck are you doing with her? And they can be telling you from afar, you got to get out.
Yes.
This is nuts. Why on earth would you want to say you're not compatible? You have different values, whatever it may be. And so they can see that, but you can't see that yourself. Or maybe deep down inside you actually know it, but the pain of the change is too overwhelming to even consider. And I think a lot of people in life know of people that are in that type of position. What role does really truly being vulnerable help us kind of navigate that potential scenario that could happen.
As the person who's in the relationship that you shouldn't be in, I would say people struggle with leaving relationships that are so obviously not good for them for two main reasons. The first one is you genuinely don't think you can survive without the person. And it could be due to your childhood trauma where you, out of survival, believe that as long as someone is in your life, that's good enough. That you weren't taught to look for the basic elements of what a relationship should have, like mutual respect and reciprocity and all of that. You've been taught that someone's staying, like unconditional loyalty, as in I'll stay with you no matter what, but I'm still going to hurt you, betray you, cheat on you, do all that stuff, but I'm with you. Like, so you've been taught that that's enough. So there's a part of you that thinks, but that person is so central to my life. I can't leave. And so there's a big element of hyper dependence on the presence of that person in your life for you to feel like everything's okay because that person is there. You don't know who you are outside of the relationship. You haven't taken the time to build your own sense of identity. You've just been taught that as long as you have that other person who you can rely on, depend on to tell you what life is about, then you're good, you're safe. And the other reason I think is that you think this is the best that you can do, that this person tolerates you, this person, so it takes you back to your own beliefs about yourself. Like, why is it that you think so little of yourself, that this is the best that you can do? But to you, that belief is very much a solid one. So it's easy for an outsider to look in and say, you can do so much better than this. But you are the one that has the belief that this is the best that you can do because you fundamentally believe that something about you makes you hard to live with and makes you hard to love. And the advice I would give to a person like that is to lean into the breakdown, because what normally happens in a relationship like this is the person who is suffering, the person who's being mistreated, the person who genuinely could do so much better is constantly aware that something's wrong. They know they're not being treated properly. They know they're not happy, but they're trapped. They feel like, I know I'm not happy, but I can't leave. So what do I do? So they're stuck in this loop of being aware of the badness of the relationship, thinking of leaving, and then being reminded that they can't leave. And so it's an endless loop of judging yourself and shaming yourself. So when I say lean into the breakdown, I mean when this person mistreats you or lies to you, instead of you giving yourself the script that you always give yourself, which is, that has nothing to do with me. They're just having a bad day. They'll be okay tomorrow. We'll talk about it another time, or maybe never. Instead of giving yourself that script only protects you from feeling the pain that you should feel when someone mistreats you. But it's now a survival mechanism where you tell yourself, that has nothing to do with me, but they hurt you. So you're not allowing yourself to experience the pain of what they did to you so that you could stay with them. Like, you're protecting yourself from having to make that big decision to leave. So when I say lean into the breakdown, when they lie to you, please sit with yourself and close your eyes and say, how does this actually feel? Because it feels awful. And if you allow yourself to feel the pain, then maybe it'll push you to make the right decision. Maybe then the pain of staying becomes bigger than the pain of leaving. Yeah.
Yes.
So lean into the breakdown. One of the things I say in The Only Constant is, sometimes you're not going through a breakdown, you're going through a breakthrough. And sometimes to go through a breakthrough, you need to break down. You need to break down who you thought you were. And you need to break down the most that you thought you could be. And your idea of who you deserve to be with and how you deserve to be treated, all of that genuinely needs to be broken down to pieces and look at each piece and say, where did I learn? Where and when in my life did I learn that it's okay for me to be betrayed? Where and when did I learn in my life that it's okay for me to be treated like I'm less than? And when you're able to go through that breakdown, then you can start constructing your own identity and your own beliefs for yourself and for the people in your life.
Very good point. This word is now a trendy word and has been trendy for a while now, and it's this authenticity. Be authentic.
To me, it's not a trend.
You've got to be authentically you know, be a girl boss or whatever it may be, you know, be authentic. And I'm like, what's the alternative? Because if you're not, it's not just shit, but it's shit for you.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
But people live in this space, don't they?
Yeah.
Authenticity is something that is so overwhelmingly scary.
Yes.
Because they want the world to see them differently to how they truly are.
Yeah.
Because they fear other people's opinions or interpretations of if they were authentic. And that kind of sucks to me. It's kind of like, it's a bit miserable when I think about it, because I want you to like me. Or actually, I don't care if you don't like me, but like me or not like me because if you know who I actually am, not because of somebody you believe me to be.
Yes.
So do women suffer with this more than men in the world that we live in with social media and all these images that are out there? Is this more of a female problem than a male problem, do you believe?
I think the struggle to be liked and accepted is equal for both men and women, but the way that society has trained us both is that it's okay for a woman to struggle in that way. It's okay for a woman to struggle with seeing this endless barrage of images and just ways that her life should be. And it's okay for her to show that emotion that she's disappointed but I don't think men are allowed the same level of showing their emotions in that way. And I think it's the fault of society. It's the fault of the patriarchy. Because they are taught that they need to be, the one that you can depend on. So what would it mean if they were to have a breakdown? What would it mean if they were to show their weaknesses or their vulnerabilities or their insecurities? It's a lot harder for them to do that. But I think we both experience the disease of comparison equally. I don't know if you're in agreement with that.
It's interesting that you asked the question. I think about it, and I think traditionally you're right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now there's far more work being done to allow men to, even without women, to other men to be able to be more open and more real about how they feel and what hurts them and allows them to be more vulnerable than before. And I think the West has led that. I don't think the Arab world is quite caught up with that, if I'm really honest. But I'm not saying it hasn't at all. It's definitely moving in the right direction. I've been here for 20 years, so I would argue that it's moving in the right direction. But can we be vulnerable to the opposite sex?
It's so necessary.
I know, but can we be then authentically us? Because that means being vulnerable. And then if you consume enough content about what women want from a man, he's supposed to be my provider and he's supposed to, give me X amount of bucks every month and every year, and he's supposed to make sure I've got this Hermes handbag, yada, yada, yada. I mean, I think there's a bunch of misguided kids that haven't got a clue about the reality.
About life.
And they're going to have a rude awakening down the road when they get into a serious relationship and they realize that it's a team and a partnership and has to be seen as that, and that's maybe when they'll realize that there's more to it than all that side of stuff.
Yes,
but I don't think men find it so easy to be vulnerable
and authentic
to women.
Yeah, I think the difficulty, like I said, I feel like women are given more permission to be vulnerable. It's almost like expected of women to be emotional in some way, but both men and women have the capacity for it. It's just how much of a safe space are you being offered as a man versus a woman to express that vulnerability? And we know, because this takes me back to authenticity, because that's what you started the question with. You can't be authentic without being vulnerable, because to me, vulnerability is about being able to sit down with somebody and share your heart, which sometimes means you're sharing your love, and sometimes it means you're sharing your disappointment. Sometimes it means you're sharing a positive affirmation toward the person that you're with, and sometimes it means that you are talking about an insecurity of yours. And you can't be authentic without being able to do all of that. But most people will pretend because they're afraid of the consequences of that vulnerability and of that authenticity. Are you going to perceive me as weak if I, as a woman, let's say you and I were together, if I came to you and I said, like, I feel very insecure every time we're out and I notice that you look at other women, like, are you going to perceive me as weak or as insecure? Or are you going to say, you know what, that's very natural. Like, I understand why you would feel that way. And, you reassure me, you say you love me, and it really doesn't mean anything. You're just looking around at people. But some men would look at me and be like, grow up. Like, that's just what men do. They look at other women. So now that if you spoke to me that way, now I will start pretending that I don't care about something that I actually do care about. So you're shutting down my authenticity in a way. And so am I. So yeah, that's just an example.
With your thoughts and opinions and beliefs, do you think it's easier to be a proud Arab or easier to be a proud Canadian? I do think, because you sit across two cultures.
Yeah.
And so you've got perspective on both.
I constantly feel like I'm fully an in-between. I haven't fully melted into the Canadian culture, and I'm not nearly as melted into the Arab culture as you think I would be. I wrote this poem not in The Only Constant, but I wrote it in Welcome Home, where I say that I'm constantly torn between both identities. So I start by saying I carry the burden of the identities I belong to. And then I talk about how one identity, the Arab culture, thinks that I'm too different and I don't deserve to belong. And one identity, the Canadian culture, thinks that I'm too different and I don't deserve to belong. So I'm constantly in an in-between space where I need to build my own identity in between, where I'm like, I don't need to fully be blended into, or melted is the best word. I don't need to fully melt into a culture to be able to say that's who I am.
Is that painful for you?
It is, because every room I walk into, I kind of have to study the room and wonder, not that it would change the way that I express myself, but just wonder whether they're going to look at me and be like, oh, she's too closed-minded because she comes from the Arab culture and I used to cover, and people don't know how to look at me and make sense of me anymore. And then sometimes I walk into rooms where there's people who do belong to the Arab culture who look at me and say, and make me feel like I'm a sellout. Like, why would you not wear the hijab anymore? You wore it for so long. Does it mean that you don't believe in what we believe? And so there is always that stream of judgment, right? Wherever you go.
When you look back at the life you've had, is there one moment you think you could relive without feeling that need to change, or that feel more comfortable with it? I say that really weird for me to say that, because you're 30-something years old and I'm 54, and I think you're so incredibly young. And so for you to look back on your...
I mean, I've been through a lot.
Najwa, you're a lady.
I mean, I have been through a lot, and I have my one friend who's 20 years older than me who tells me, he's like, you live your life, and I think you think that everybody goes through everything that you go through, but as an outsider looking in, and as someone who's lived 20 plus years more than you, I look at you and I'm like, I don't know how you did all of that. just in terms of paving my own path and not following the regular norms that women and girls who belong to my culture would follow. And it's not to say that it's wrong for them to follow. It's just that I chose a different path for myself, coming up against the community, coming up against family, coming up against friends that I had, and at the same time coming up against this outer Canadian culture that's looking in at me and saying, well, you don't look like us, like back when I used to cover, so why would we defend you in any way? Or just going through many moments where I felt extremely isolated in the changes that I chose to make for myself, and I felt like the only thing I had was me. The only person that I had to pull me through it all was me. So if I could experience any of it differently, I wouldn't, because I don't think I would have the self-conviction that I have right now, and I don't think I would have the ability to walk into a room and literally, and I never thought this was possible for me, to walk into a room and not think, do they like me? Do they approve of me? But to walk into a room as, this is me, and I'm not even thinking whether you approve of me or not. I'm a whole person.
Okay, we spoke earlier on about something, and that what we spoke about really kind of triggered me into thinking stuff. And it was all of a sudden I had this stranger in front of me that I connected with in this nanosecond of a moment. So let's talk about forgiveness. I have been in situations before where I haven't been able to move on. I've been stuck, and I keep telling myself the story. If they would just apologize to me, we could all find some peace and move on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think to myself, would that be enough?
Mm.
Is me forgiving somebody enough to empower me to change and accept change and lean into it in a positive and constructive way? Or am I either overthinking that, or am I really not making it a bigger deal, as I said? You please give me some guidance.
Yeah, I think forgiveness is a conscious effort to stop allowing the person who once hurt you to have power over you. I don't think forgiveness is about saying what they did was okay, or that you finally made peace with it and it's been enough time and it's okay now. I don't think that's what forgiveness is. I think you could forgive someone and still believe that what they did was absolutely wrong. And I think you can forgive someone and still feel a little bit of pain every time you think back to what they did to you. So the reason I said it's a conscious effort is every time the pain of what they did visits you, you have to remind yourself that it hurts because that person meant something to you. It hurts because you invested in them in some way. It hurts because you never thought they would hurt you in that way, and they did. So of course it's going to hurt. It's just a testament to how much they meant to you. It doesn't mean that you haven't forgiven them yet. And I don't know that you can decide in a moment to forgive someone and poof, it's gone. I had someone once apologize to me probably 5 or 6 years after they lied about me and in a way that really affected my life, like in legal matters. And this person was someone that I trusted, and I thought she would never lie. She would never not tell the truth. And she did lie in a big way about my character as a person. And years later, she came to me and said, I want to apologize. I knew what I was doing, and I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I was lying about you, and I'm really sorry. And it was in that moment that I realized that I had already forgiven her, because her apology meant nothing to me. I was like, I felt like I didn't need it when she said it. It was like, I've already forgiven you. But I don't know that I knew that I already forgave her until she said that.
Yeah.
Because every time I would think back to, every time I would be reminded of what she did, I would feel a little bit of pain. But it's like over time, I realized that wasn't a choice I made. She chose to do that, and I know the truth of what happened, and I'm not going to allow, remember, the conscious effort to not give power to the pain they inflicted upon you to continue to control you. I'm not going to try to change her mind about me. I'm just, let her deal with the choice that she made. And so, yeah, I don't know that in any particular moment that you're like, that's it. I'm out of hurt and now I've forgiven you. I think it just happens over time and then you realize it at some point.
Najwa, thank you so much for coming to join me today. Thank you so much for being so kind of wise. And it's like, you talked about stoic and stuff like that. You're not. You think about your answers before you give them. Okay, you're clearly very well read and very intelligent. It's an absolute joy to spend some time with you. So thank you.
That's really sweet of you. Thank you.